You built the strategy. The team agreed. Months later, you're still explaining it in the same meetings to the same people. And the easy answer is that the strategy isn't clear, or you've got the wrong people to work that strategy. I've worked with leadership teams for the past 30 years. Yes, I'm not so young anymore. So I'll tell you honestly, the strategy is almost never the problem. The interesting thing is that teams often think they have one problem. They will say, we need better communication, we need more accountability, ownership, faster decisions, we need more collaboration. Sometimes that's true, they need that. But very often those are just symptoms. The real issue is sitting below that surface. And if we don't identify what's happening below the surface, no amount of strategic planning, restructuring, retreats will solve that. So today, I want to share a few of the signals I look for in the first 30 minutes with a leadership team. And my hope is that by the end of this video, you will start noticing some of these patterns in your own team before that these patterns become problems. Signal number 1, check who speaks first, who speaks last, who never finishes a sentence. One of the first things I watch is the flow of conversation. Who speaks most often? Who gets interrupted? Who never finish their thought? And who might wait for a permission before sharing an opinion? Because every team has an official organizational chart, but every team has an invisible organization chart. The invisible one often tells me much more than what's happening. Once I saw a VP, they are trying to share their ideas and they are trying to speak. Someone else is jumping to clarify, explain. And I've seen leadership teams where everyone immediately will look at the CEO before responding. So I've seen highly experienced executives soften their opinions because they already know which perspectives are welcomed and which are not. What I'm looking here, it isn't who will talk more. I'm looking for whether the influence is well distributed or concentrated. Because when few people or voices will shape every discussion, the team will lose the intelligence. And when people will stop speaking honestly, they will keep on having opinions that they will share in the hallways or gossiping instead of the meeting room. Signal number 2, what gets named and what gets stepped around. This one is fascinating. Sometimes a team will spend an hour discussing a problem without ever mentioning the actual problem. Have you ever seen that happening? Everyone will talk around the issue. People will become very strategic, very polite and careful, but nobody names what's really happening. Maybe there is tension between two departments. Maybe priorities are competing, or maybe trust has been damaged. So this is something, instead of addressing it directly, the conversation will stay safely above the surface. I often say the conversation the team is not having is usually the conversation the team most needs to have. So when I notice repeated avoidance, I become curious. Because avoidance isn't necessarily bad. Avoidance is information. It will tell me there is something in the system that doesn't yet feel safe enough to address. And until that changes, the progress often remains slower than it needs to be. Signal number 3. What happens when someone disagrees? This is one of my favorite signals, honestly. Not whether disagreement exists, but what happens after it appears. Healthy teams disagree. In fact, I worry more when nobody disagrees, because either everyone is a genius who thinks exactly alike, or people have stopped taking risks. What I watch is, can people challenge an idea without attacking the person? Can someone offer a different perspective without immediately defending themselves? Can the team stay curious when viewpoints are different? And perhaps, most importantly, what happens when someone disagrees with the most senior leader in the room? I've been in meetings where the CEO shares an idea and everyone immediately agrees. 5 minutes later, during a break, people quietly will tell me all the reasons it won't work. That's not alignment, that's compliance. And compliance is expensive because problems don't disappear when people stay silent. They simply show up later during execution. High-performing leadership teams understand something very important. Disagreement is not the threat. The inability to disagree safely is the threat. Let me give you a real example. A leadership team once brought me in because they wanted help improving collaboration. It sounds simple enough. Within the first half an hour, I noticed something interesting. Whenever a particular executive started speaking, another leader would quickly jump in, reinterpret what they meant. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. So the executive would stop talking. The conversation would move on. Nobody seemed to notice. But the pattern kept happening. Later, during interviews, we discovered the real issue wasn't about collaboration. It was about the trust and the perceived credibility. Leaders, they don't longer feel that their perspective is valued. As a result, they had gradually disengaged from strategic conversation. The team thought they had a communication problem. What they actually had was a relationship problem. And until we addressed that dynamic, no communication tool was going to fix it. Nothing will fix that thing. That's why I always say, the pattern is the problem. And the pattern usually shows up long before people can name it. So if something feels off with your leadership team, but you cannot quite name it or what's there, I will invite you to do the Leadership Alignment Scorecard. It's a simple assessment that takes about 5 minutes to complete it and will help you to identify where alignment may be breaking down across your leadership team. Because often the issue isn't what people are saying, it's what the system is silently reinforcing. And if you'd like to get a clearer picture of what's helping or hindering your team's performance, you will find that link about the scorecard in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.